is the March 13th, 2018 Climate Ambassador meeting.
What about septic?
That's the issue. Because out of those like 4 or so that don't have any electric anymore, I saw that in one of them they put solar panels on it and had a little generator, and I saw lights. So I went closer and started looking, and the others are all abandoned. They're just boarded up, and you can see nobody's repaired the waste lines. But on this one, they repaired the waste line, and it goes straight down along one of the pilings and down into the ground. And about a day before I walked this, the water had actually washed all the way over and into the river behind, because it's just a little stiff sand. And so the ocean had pretty good waves, and it washed all the way over the stiff sand and into the thing. And here's this 4-inch PVC going down into that sand. Well, I wonder if they've even got a septic tank, and if they do, I mean, come on, your drip lines are
Underwater.
yeah, your drip lines are in the water. They're basically pumping their way straight into the river and the ocean. So I mean, that's a real nasty public health issue. And I just don't think, I doubt that DEP is, well, DEP or Department of Health. I don't know that either one of them is really on top of this.
Well, what happens, and I don't know whether you're prepared, but from the legal aspect, St. Johns County, I'm sure, has certain standards for a CO. And, if you've got a condo building that's been undermined or burned out or something, they basically say it's uninhabitable.
It's condemned.
Okay, but the point is, that's not the fault of the county that they had to do that. They're just following the law. They haven't taken the problem, they just said you can't use this. Why hasn't St. Johns County gone in and said, no CO?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I think they probably got burned.
Well, they did get burned pretty bad. And, the holding that came out of the courts is terrible, in my view. I mean, it's, I would argue that case is a pretty good example of how, if you're a local government, there's nothing that you can do right. You just can't. You don't have an option that works. Because what is the option? People want to build in these places. As soon as you try to limit that, they're going to sue you. And sometimes they win, sometimes they don't. They don't always win, but enough to make you nervous. And then once they do build in them, then you're on the hook for paying for it. Because if you don't, then they sue you too. So trying to find those points to kind of say, hey, look, you got to find a way to short circuit this cycle, because it's just not viable to come here. I mean, the way I would portray it in some instances is virtually that what you're doing is you've taken the idea of property rights to the point where it's become kind of perverse in that it allows the property owner to basically just go to the taxpayer and say, give me money. Because I want to do stuff, and it doesn't matter if it's stupid, you're going to have to pay one way or the other. And I mean, I don't think any of us really believe that that's, I mean, we have a lot of rights, but whether or not that's one of them, I find that kind of questionable. Yeah, I think that's where the part of the rights and the responsibilities comes in. But if the courts aren't seeing it that way, it doesn't matter what we think, so it's trying to find the arguments that, and I guess that kind of brings it back to the road ordinance. The effort with that is to try to make clear from the local government's perspective that you're trying to do everything you can to help private property owners, but within reason. That at some point, there's a point which you can't fix things that are beyond your control. And trying to make that as clear as possible in the ordinance, both so that property owners see that, and that you can make that argument to the court if you end up in front of court. With the hope that the court will say, well, yeah, you're right, I don't know what else you could possibly do other than bankrupt yourself. Thank you. That's what we agitated for that too, and they're going, I'm not the only one, and usually who has stopped that? It's been the Association of Realtors. There is actually a section in statute that you're required to provide notice to potential property purchasers if the property, if any part of the property is within the coastal construction control line area, but it's useless. I mean, it's buried somewhere in that stack of paperwork that people flip through and sign on wherever the tabs are located. You know, most people don't read that. And there was actually they did some survey work through the University of Florida Law School, and they surveyed people about that had purchased property that was required to have that notice, and it was like 86.5% of the property owners that had purchased either didn't receive it, or if they did, they didn't recall receiving any notice. And even if they did recall seeing that notice and then read it, what it says is so kind of vanilla that it really wouldn't give you the scope of what the potential loss and risk is. And so, you know, it's, I actually published a piece that outlines how to do notice better so that people would actually see it, and to improve the content of it so people would be more aware of the risk. But, you know, unless somebody's willing to enact that, and then it comes back to the political question, and you have to look at where the politics of this resides.
Now,
If you get that passed, I think it's a wonderful thing.
is that something that could be adopted on local level?
It could, in theory, if you do it at the local level. It would be interesting to see what would happen, because if you could get if a few local governments started adopting at the local level, I think one or two things would eventually happen. Either the state's going to take away the ability to do it at the local level.
And I'm surprised.
That would, I mean, that's probably what's most likely. But the other possibility, maybe, just maybe, is the Realtors Association would say, oh God, these are a hassle. They're all starting to come out just a little bit different. We should have one that's uniform across the state. That would be a good outcome if you could improve the statewide notice.
So you don't want
But you don't want the
a
state.
dozen to have identical ones.
You don't want to do that right now. Because it'll be a statewide preemption.
Yeah. I mean, with the way things are going lately, there's just too much pressure for preempting things at the state level.
A big part of that is there's no education on the realtor's side.
Yeah, and you know, it's how does
I'm a
that?
realtor, I know.
What is that old quote? What is that old quote? Something about it's very difficult to get a person to understand something whose job depends on them not understanding. There's something about that, and it's, you know, it's true.
It's an education thing.
Well, a lot of the realtors just don't. And that will change eventually, because eventually people are going to be savvy enough if their realtor doesn't talk about it, they're going to ask. But in the interim time, there are still the realtors that take the attitude, if I ignore this, I can just keep moving these properties.
Well, the problem is.
There's still some doing it. Don't you think? Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of that. There's more than a lot of that.
I think there's more of that than not.
And too many of the people that moved into this area that come from Chicago or Detroit or someplace.
When you
No
come from
concept.
rural Iowa, you don't know that. I mean, you don't think about property literally disappearing.
I know,
I think there's something in that purpose.
My wife was an office manager, said, one of the guys in her office said, stayed in Florida with Hugo, but that's my wife. Not exactly the same, but the idea now.
We know people from the Midwest, though, I mean, different reasons, I mean, different types of flooding, but they're not unaccustomed to the idea of the ground getting covered up by water, you know?
No, they're
used
accustomed
to
to
floods.
flooding, yeah.
Yeah, just, you know, from rising up out of the river rather than, you know, washing across, and then downhill, then down your street.
It's true. You know, all the drainage there is.
What does the writer in the paperwork say with regard to people buying new houses? What does it say?
It's just, warns you that if you're built on the other side of the coastal construction line, if there's major damage, you may not be able to rebuild.
You may not be able to claim that.
Does it say that flat out in the statute? I don't think it says, I think it just says you're subject to specific additional regulation. I mean,
That's the way I present it, this is what could happen.
well, it's good that you do,
Yeah,
because
that's
that's a possibility, but I think the statutory
It's just kind of-
I think you're referring to a statute, right, and you're referring to disclosure.
Is
Yes.
what you use in uniform disclosure from Florida?
Florida Association of Realtors.
I should take a look at it. I didn't have to have a long time to do it.
Like a bar association gets together and writes these things.
That stuff's usually, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that stuff's usually kind of heavily leaning towards the side of CYA to the extent of, yeah, I told you, I did tell you.
But in a way that doesn't make your hair stand on end.
Intended to keep you from being liable without scaring away customers, hopefully.
I can tell you that 10 different ways, and only one of them will have an impact. The others, oh, yeah, great, what do I sign? Shiny package.
Well, they see everything's still there, that was built, in the 60s, or
Yeah.
whatever, it's still there, it's like, what's the
Yeah.
statute?
Well, you just get the blanket assumption that, well, everybody else lives here, right? So it must be
Yeah.
fine. I mean,
This house was built in '62,
Still
right?
here.
It's still here.
That's why I live in Satellite Beach.
because it's still here.
It's weathered the storm.
Now, one story. It's kind of outside what you guys talked about, but what about, the city clearly knows there are issues.
You know what?
There are issues,
Oh, yeah.
okay? Can that be used against the city if the city doesn't act at this time, or what's, how, that's part of this perverse business, I think, but,
I don't think so in most cases, I mean, the most likely scenario for something like that happening, I mean, in most cases, it's just actually not that likely, because usually the local government is only held responsible for decisions that, how do I make this simple?
Negatively impact the situation.
There are, well, not just that.
That's not,
Cities, okay, the way I usually present it is in that drainage example I give. Okay, so I wrote about drainage and whether or not you're responsible as a local government if your drainage system stops working as well because of sea level rise. Well, you've already seen that happen. And my argument is that I think the way a court should interpret it, again, there's never a guarantee with what a court's going to do. I would argue that the most sensible legal interpretation is that if sea level rise goes up and therefore your drainage doesn't work as well, and then houses flood, that you're not liable for that flooding damage because you've maintained that drainage system. As long as, the pipes aren't collapsed, as long as the inlets aren't all clogged up. The fact that it doesn't drain as fast because the pipes have filled up with water, that doesn't mean you didn't do maintenance, it just means that the water level went up. You don't control it. So you only control the system. And you've maintained the integrity of that system as best as possible in the circumstances. The fact that it doesn't prevent flooding in a situation that it would have 40 years ago, you're not going to be liable for that. That's the argument that I would make. However, if, the homeowners flood, and they can show that the reason they flooded was because you added all this additional development without, adding stormwater drainage for it.
After having been, advised of it in a way that's still demonstrable.
Yeah, I mean, if you already know you've got flooding in this area, and then you're allowing additional impervious to go in without, at minimum, offsetting that impervious, or hopefully doing even more than that, and then somebody floods, now you might be in trouble. Because you clearly made a decision there that can contribute to.
I can see some
additional
percent
flooding.
in that.
Yeah.
That's rare though, I have to say. because of new standards and permitting rules, it's pretty rare.
It's
that
gotten
government-
harder, hasn't it? It used to be a common occurrence. There's older case law when local governments were clearly liable.
After the early 90s, you don't see new development
Because of the water
without
management.
stormwater.
Right.
And so new, that's what we try to tell people, like, when they say, you know, all this new development is why we're flooding, and it's, you know, creating all of this, you know, badly impacting the lagoon. We have to explain to people it's not the new development that's the problem, it's the old.
It's your house.
Yeah, exactly. The new stuff is actually.
We don't build stormwater ponds to treat new development. We build stormwater ponds to treat the old development that doesn't have stormwater.
Right.
But I think, John, maybe I guess your question is kind of, because we know this stuff now, are we in trouble because we know it? And I would argue, for the most part, no. You're not
Early 90s.
You're not going to be held to a higher standard because of what you know than if you try to remain ignorant.
Although, okay, that was one of the arguments against the St. John's decision, was the definition of maintenance.
Definition of what?
Maintenance.
Yeah, it was, that's kind of right. So I guess where I was going with the drainage example is the reason I argue that the mistake that the court made when they made St. John's County liable for the road washing away is they screwed up the use of the word maintenance. Maintenance is supposed to mean just like kind of the ordinary everyday things you do to keep something operating. It specifically does not mean rebuilding, redesigning, upgrading, increasing, any of that stuff. It's just, so for a road, it's maintenance to, you know, like patch the holes and sweep it off, maybe resurface it once in a while. That's maintenance. And that you're legally required to do. And if you don't, and somebody suffers injury, well, government, you're on the hook. There's no doubt.
That's why we don't like to build sidewalks.
Yeah, because once you build a sidewalk now, the tree roots elevates part of it, and somebody trips over that, you're like, because your maintenance was, you're supposed to realize that there's this, you know, root elevated in, and that's why you're supposed to go grind it off.
We're supposed to predict roots and, you know, sand settling for some reason.
Help me understand this, coming from probably a very elementary point of view, but it sounds like what you're describing is a community, everything's running fine, and then you get some floodwaters, maybe a foot or two deep, that everybody thinks should have gone away faster than it did for whatever the reasons are. And that can end up going to court and somebody figuring out where the accountability is versus a flood event where 10 feet of water came in, or 20 feet of water came in. And it's the same exact event, this is just much higher, and all of a sudden, any question about maintenance will go right out the window.
Oh, yeah, because it's
So now we have the court deciding, well, to what level is the event? I mean, is that what I'm hearing?
I mean, to an extent, absolutely, yeah, because, I mean, there are certain events that even by your own engineering standard, you're designing that, you know, maybe 1 10-year storm event or 25-year storm event or something, you design the drainage to handle it. And if a modest rainstorm causes significant flooding, yeah, if somebody sues, the court's going to be like, why did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
And if they can show it was something that, you know,
Then you have to prove, had things been functioning order, this would not have occurred. Or not to a degree that it would cause
Yeah,
damage.
yeah.
I mean, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not trying to
Yes.
say finite,
Yeah.
just trying to understand.
yeah. If I am the property owner who got harmed, and I can show that, you know, if you as a city hadn't done X or Y, I wouldn't have gotten flooded or not nearly as much,
Mm-hmm. There's actually a lot of lawsuits to that effect.
you know. But no, you're right, it's starting to get into a difficult area, because you look at something like Houston you brought up, and it's really hard, because obviously there's no way, a lot of those people are going to flood no matter, there's just no way. So the arguments they're not trying to make are about, you know, did you allow too much development, did it not have enough drainage?
I think also,
But when you get 50 inches of rain or whatever,
yeah,
Well, that's the other thing too, is like when you say, did you allow too much development, you know, I would like the state to let me know, like, when I can deny it. You know? When can I say we've had too much of that?
well, actually.
What point are we allowed to say that? And and the point is, the
and not
only
have to
point,
pay for saying it.
the only point that we have to say that is we don't have plant capacity at the water plant. We don't have plant capacity in the sewer plant, or our roads are too crowded. That's the only time we've ever been able to deny a building permit. Ever.
Do we have that done, or do we know?
Oh, yeah.
The last few days, there was an article in one of the southern newspapers. Miami Beach, you know, they're the ones that are raising roads, grading pumps and all this. They have established
Didn't
an
have areas that-
outside team to come in and look at what they're doing in their plans. Because people are starting to complain about, and one case they cited was that the city raised the road in front of a restaurant. And there was some flooding damage in the restaurant. And the insurance company for the restaurant said,
The road caused it.
no, they said that because the elevation of your floor is below the road, that's defined as a basement, we don't pay for water damages in the basement, basically.
Whereas
And the
before it
county,
wasn't.
and the city, because before it hadn't been, and the city had to help
Intervene.
solve that little
Gotta
problem.
compensate
It's
them.
interesting to see that they
No,
built
they
the
just,
road that
they
high.
butted in there.
That would create, even without going to court, understanding that water runs downhill.
Well, you take a look at the pictures they've got, and those roads are 18 inches or more.
I'm not getting an argument. As a matter of fact, I know some business people in Cocoa Village that are nice days are starting to get flooded. And they're hysterical with the city there. And the city doesn't seem to be doing anything about it. You know, the perception the city's not doing anything. But Cocoa Village is starting to flood on sunny days.
That's the kind of stuff that I've heard about.
Doing
anything is that just with you know.
I can assure you the city's not doing anything when we hook up.
So, my point here is that the newspapers made the news that
By the riverfront.
residents impacted by these attempts to correct the problems, the unintended side
The unintended
consequences, they're beginning to raise noise and things, and so you've got this tension that's taking place now, that I guess the difference is those folks are having to deal with the problems in real time. We have hopefully a decade or more maybe to work our way through this. Well,
Well, go to the 200 block of Wilson. Go drive up the 200 block of Wilson Avenue. And you'll see a house there that is clear, it's under construction right now, but for years, and it still is, the home is a good foot under the base of the road. And that area is actually a dip anyway, so all the other houses are doing pretty well because they were built correctly. But this one house just wasn't built at an elevation that it should have been. So this roadway floods every time it rains. It could be a light rain, and you can barely get a car through it. We can't raise the road because we know we'll kill that house. I mean, it'll be
Is
gone.
that the Nelsons?
Wilson?
No, the family there.
I don't know.
Isn't that kind of what happened on?
But they,
We had the firefighters in Palm Bay. They had a house up there in that area where they.
I don't know, I got letters, we got called every time. Yeah, every time there was a rain, we got called, because it would go into their garage and into their front doorstep.
Is that
And,
Is that what happened to the house across from Rockwell Carey on Kale? Is it Kale?
And then they're going into the garage, we decided to buy it.
Yeah, you bought it, right.
yeah. But we didn't, in this instance, I refused. It was like, this is a problem with your home. I mean, this is not our problem. In fact, because of your home, we're not satisfying these other people that are around you,
Yeah,
so they
that's
can get to their
different.
houses because of you, And so, you need to get, you've had plenty of engineers to tell you that this is a problem with your home elevation. You have to address it. So you can see that they're trying to do that right now, but it took about 4 years of finally a pretty stern letter to them to make them understand that this is not a city
Are they gonna
problem.
raise it? Are they
part
gonna
of that was
They're
that
like fortifying the bottom of the house. I think they're like basically taking it off the height of their ceiling.
Mhm.
they got a home had a deep discount because it already had problems. So that was the reason they, that they got a discount, so.
Amazing you know all the details.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question, if you don't mind, about flood insurance.
Yes.
I have friends right in the heart of Houston, that's why I happen to know a little bit more specifically about it. But my friend Glenn had flood insurance for the last 30 years, and last year he canceled it because they never get floods. And of course, we all know what happened in Harris County. He had 4 feet of water in his whole house, But here's the thing, it brings me back to this insurance thing. Although he doesn't have insurance and others around him didn't have insurance, FEMA gave them up to $20,000 or $23,000 for repairs without insurance. You're aware of that, right? And then you can get a loan. Pardon?
Was it in a flood?
I have no idea, honestly.
If they were in a flood zone, wouldn't they have had to have
But
flood insurance?
I'm trying to understand where the premiums are funding that.
Okay, here's
We get a lot of money for this thing.
The way it's supposed to work is, if he wasn't in a flood zone, then he can immediately get disaster funding for his
Yeah.
flood. If he's not in a flood zone.
Right.
If you are in a flood zone and you don't have flood insurance, you can get disaster funding, but only after you've already spent the amount that you would have been covered for if you had had.
Well, this didn't happen again. I'm talking a specific case where, the adjusters came over and they gave him a check, somewhere between $20,000 and $23,000,
Then my
which was
guess
the
is-
max that he was allowed to get from FEMA without having insurance.
Well, then my guess is that if he didn't have insurance, he's probably not in a flood zone.
Right.
And he missed payment.
But where's that $23,000 come from, and why
Taxpayers. Taxpayers.
No, I
It's
understand.
I mean, it's basically, it's the supplement.
I understand,
It's the reason we have
we're
60
collecting fees by a lot of people, and then some aren't.
It doesn't come from the NFIP necessarily.
I don't know.
It can come from other parts of FEMA's budget, not
Okay.
necessarily from the National Flood Insurance.
Okay.
So you can see these
Come from the
Yeah, it probably comes through the Stafford Act, or things like that, the disaster supplemental.
Hey, a little while ago, you mentioned the name of this other, more accurate flood map, the one, where there's.
Hazard.
Not necessarily more accurate, just different.
H-A-S.
Yeah, it's a capital A, it's H-A-Z-U-S.
Okay.
And it's,
I think it seems like I've seen that somewhere before.
Yeah, we've shown it to you.
form.
That's the
an
map that we
absolute-
presentations
Oh,
and the
okay.
plans.
And I mean, it's hard to say it's more accurate because ultimately these are all just models.
Yeah.
And a model has inputs, and no single storm event is ever necessarily going to be the same as what you've input into a model. So I mean,
I think what I noticed on that was that with one, with the firm, my house looked, just in my own personal case, my house looked pretty okay. And with the other one, Hazard's, my house was like in the next to the worst. It was one notch down from the worst.
Go without your work.
This is based on the last flood insurance study we did, which was, when was that thing done, back in the 80s?
'09.
No, actually, way longer than that.
That's the 100 years part, that's how long ago it was.
Yeah, right. They did some updating, but it's still based on the same flood insurance that was done many years ago.
the new update is still based on that?
Still based on that. They have not done a new flood insurance study
Oh, I did not
since that
know
original
this.
firm map.
I believe.
Not like you've developed anything since then.
What Jason, the Stetson guy, made some comments, I believe. Hazards is intended for things high value. In other words, an extreme case would be a nuclear power plant, a water treatment plant, fire stations, this kind of thing that you don't want to have a problem with. And so it tends to be more conservative.
That's what I meant to say, more conservative rather than more accurate.
Yeah, I mean, he feels, in my conversations, he's kind of indicated that he feels kind of frustrated because he personally feels like, from his work, has this, maybe kind of overestimates the risk, and the flood insurance rate map, seems to underestimate the risk.
And the Dutch, they
Well, I mean-
overestimate, or, I mean, where you're truly underwater.
I mean, they don't have the flooding losses.
Right.
They spend their money up front.
And they are truly underwater.
Because, I mean, we spend, how many years in a row now, we had to spend like $50 or $60 billion in a supplemental bill to deal with.
Well, they had, when was it, in the 50s or
53.
something, they had that
53.
flood killed, had dikes fail and things.
Yeah, it was in 1853, and that's when they made this switch to, 1 in 10,000 year storm event standard, and they started really building things.
Which I wonder what that standard is if they take into consideration sea level.
Well, I was mentioning to Courtney, I need to do some more research, because I know they've now changed, they're no longer using the 1 in 10,000 year storm event. Because, I mean, how do you even predict what's 1 in 10,000? I mean, we don't have 10,000 years.
That's not a bad
It's hard to
It's
So now.
The modeling has to change completely now. It's a new day. That's it, like even our stormwater plan, when we started that process with our consultant, we had to give them time to change the model. Because it's just a different world now. If you want sea level rise to be included in your infrastructure planning, they had to make that change in their processes and procedures. So to me, the 100-year storm and things like that is just not a realistic criteria anymore. Doesn't make any sense.
I would argue it never
Yeah.
is a very good idea, and even less so now.
Right,
Just if you're talking about wanting to protect people and property.
right.
I mean, if you're wanting to deal with the politics, maybe it makes sense.
Correct.
But
See, we had, I think, when we were in Titusville, we had a water supply that was right underneath the city, basically. So keeping impervious was not just a stormwater issue, it was a recharge issue. So in the city of Titusville, if you look at their code for stormwater, it's not just the modeling to keep the stormwater runoff on site. They felt that the most impactful stormwater regulation was limiting the impervious surface on the site. So that was their focus, and which had a huge impact on development rights. And we had lots of legal challenges because of it.
so very low percentage allowed.
Mhm. So, okay. We're probably going to spend a good 30 minutes on this. We need to wrap up the language for the charter to start beginning to create the ordinances and send them over to the attorneys. And we want to make sure that we have we don't have to wordsmith it as much, but we need your general, guidance on how we want to present this on the charter as a question. We definitely, after discussing with council and some of the other department heads, want to limit it to 55 feet at the max at this point. So we know it says 65 feet on some of these. If we can either go lower than 55, but we don't think 55 is going to get through council, and nor the ballot.
65? Well,
I mean, I'm sorry, anything over 55. Yeah.
Why are we going to 55 in the first place?
I don't know. So we want to make room for at least 15 feet. 15 feet would allow for the property owner to come into compliance with stormwater and all of that and add a floor for mixed use. So let me go over that real quick. Here's a common building for a mixed use project. You have a 15-foot first floor commercial. That's a standard, right? So everybody knows that. Very rarely do you see a commercial building on the first floor lower than 15 feet. It's just, when you walk into a store, you see higher ceilings, like,
They're
here.
going to 20, and they're going to
So-
20.
And some of them are going to 20. So residential is usually 10, okay? And so you have,
But those are going to 12 to get a little higher ceiling in the new building, in the new.
The commercial property, you have sprinklers, sprinkler system requirements, other apparatuses. You have drop ceilings, acoustical ceilings.
And,
A lot of stuff.
right, and in these,
55 is...
Well, we're already at 35, so it's not really a stretch. Especially when you think about,
well, if you think about across the street, on A1A, it's all 65 feet
What does
allowed.
55 feet mean? If that's 15, 25, 35, 44, what does 55 mean? One more story?
Basic,
No, not
none of
necessarily.
that. You
So
know the
this-
building, I'm sorry, go
Okay,
ahead.
let me just finish this. Okay, you have a 15-foot commercial normally. It can be 20 sometimes, but developers are going to fit within your envelope that you give them. You normally will have a ground floor that needs to be at least 9 feet. That would be a parking garage, is about 9 feet, okay? Sometimes they can get it under 8. So you have that. And in between these floors, you usually have a foot. And these are for what John said, sprinkler, blah, 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 okay? So 10-foot residential, 10-foot residential. If you have 55 feet, that's generally the concept you're allowing in this instance, okay?
Okay. So right now the limit is 35.
That's correct.
And that's why we haven't been able to get any redevelopment. And that's why we're stuck with these old sites that have all these, slabs of parking left on them, buildings that are vacant. And we've not been able to encourage or entice or have projects become feasible enough on these small parcels so that we can get the stormwater management that we want, so that we can get the sustainability principles that we want, so that we can get low impact design on there and less pervious on there.
So this concept will usually be about 50 feet in height, okay?
Where's the 6 feet coming from? Just the roof?
Yeah, if you're looking at sometimes you don't need that, but if you see 10-foot floors and they don't have anything in between them, that means the ceiling's usually 9 foot and they have something in between, because they have to have stuff,
In between floors, you have your air conditioning, you have your.
No, no, I understand.
Okay.
I was just trying to understand what
Most
50 or
developers want-
55 feet means in terms of
I'll give you
a
an
building.
example.
How many stories are we talking about?
I'll give you an example. The building that John doesn't like on A1A, the one that's elevated, has the non-habitable first floor, Pelican Beach, that's 42 feet. So if you think about, you'll add this on top of it, and that's not high at all. I mean, in the scheme of things.
Well, that's what that
That's nothing.
is.
It's 42
Parking
feet.
plus three,
2 floors.
two floors.
2 floors.
Well,
Okay.
Maybe I'm missing the point, and then I'll drop it after this if I'm not getting it. In order to invite others to the table that might want to look to do something here, they might want a building that has a ground floor, a first floor, and then how many levels above it? 3 or 2?
whatever they could fit in the envelope.
But that's what I'm saying, what would determine the envelope?
The maximum height of 55.
Okay, we are determining the envelope right now as we're talking.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if I came here and if I came to the city and said, I want to build a building, and I want that plus 3 stories, how many feet would that be? Would that be 55 or 57 or
55
60?
feet, 55 feet.
Is that more enjoyable to?
It's more attractive to you because you have more lettable space in there.
That's what I'm getting to. So why would you limit it to 50 feet when you're going to make this major change and leave all of that off the
Because
table?
you have the added issue, like right here, of people not wanting it to look like what they consider something that they left Miami for, So it is a very real issue. Like, I understand, I am a planner. Tall buildings is nothing for me. I think it's great, it's better growth management, it's better for everything, is to have higher density and higher height. But I'm also a realist, and we have to put this to a vote. And the worst thing you can do is, if this fails, we will not be able to go back for years, because nobody's gonna trust the city to do that. Yeah.
But this thing is, this 50 foot is almost arbitrary. Well, you're saying it's
Not
that.
really,
You're saying it's that, so it's the first floor plus 2 stories, and that's what you got.
right.
So it can't be 3 stories.
Or if they don't,
Height limitations are not arbitrary, it's because you set it, because that's your city character, that's the type of development or the maximum development you think that area can handle, based on traffic, your utilities, so the density, we can add 65 feet if we want, but if we don't have units to put in there, they're not gonna go to 65 feet.
Believe me,
That's why we
I'm
have it.
not arguing that, I'm just saying, if you approve that and nobody wants that because they want another story, then what problem do we solve? I want to know that there's a market for what the 50-foot minimum. If you just
They
go from one
always
yard to
want
50
another
feet-
story, Larry. I mean, they always do. If you're a developer, you want to maximize your
Cheaper to
land.
go up than it is to go
Yeah.
out.
I'm just, no, I'm on your side. Maybe I'm not being clear. I'm totally on that side. I'm saying if I'm a developer and I come in here and say, I want to build that, but I want 3 stories above my restaurant, you're going to say, no, it's too high.
That's correct.
And I'm going to walk away and go to another
There's
city.
many people that do walk away, but there's many people.
That's why
who
we
build
look
it.
like we look today.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I'm asking you. Is there a
Because we
market
can't
for
get
that?
anybody to come here because they can't develop.
Yeah.
And that's
So
why we look like
Not
what we look
everybody's
like
gonna
today.
build the same thing, so
Right.
you'll have some developers that
What all of us in a
say.
small
"I'm not gonna
community
do
would
that."
like, we all like fixed 1-acre lots, nothing over 10 feet, you know, and spread out, but there's a thing called a tax base, and we need to attract money, or we're not going to survive here, and we're not going to have what we have. So that's why I'm asking the question with that in mind, about how do we increase.
But you have to understand, not everybody thinks like you, and we have to sell it to a group of people who
This
didn't
is-
sit here for 3 weeks learning all this.
This
That's
is a
the
compromise.
chance, you know.
This is a compromise position.
Okay.
You know, I
So you
mean,
think this is what we can get, is 50 feet,
55 feet.
55 feet?
There was a
And that allows you
side-
parking on the ground and 2 stories above it.
3
Three
stories.
stories.
The restaurant and 2 stories.
Yeah.
So the part about the parking area and the development, you're saying that the people who would go into those areas, I'm not arguing against it, but the people who would go into those areas would be also required to follow city requirements to develop the parking and.
Yeah, that's part of the
Drainage.
code.
This is
Oh,
not
absolutely.
in the city. This
Yeah.
is-
So look at the change, and this is the thing, is we basically say, shall the maximum height limitation for commercial and mixed-use zoned properties located only on the west side of State Road A1A be increased from 35 feet to 55 feet to create the ability for redevelopment of properties
To comply
to,
with.
to comply with flood attenuation and water qualities, parking, and landscape, and new sustainability standards. So that's the only way they can go up, is if they comply with all that.
That's not the way I read
So
that.
it's sort of a compromise, that's the way I was reading it, it's a compromise, they have to
So-
do X, Y, and Z in order to get the 55.
Right.
You earn your way into there.
Well, there are certain things you have to, yes,
What does that mean? I
there,
don't know what that means.
okay, let me explain it.
By complying with the,
Okay, I'll be glad to explain it.
Please.
Basically, if you, they have to meet certain minimum standards, period, end of discussion. They have to meet the current stormwater requirements, they have to meet basic minimum guidelines. And what we've been trying to do and working towards within this group is an incentive-based system where you're limited to that 35 feet unless you earn the right to go up. And you earn the right to go up by doing extra sustainability standards, by doing things for the land, for the buildings that are innovative, and for transportation. And there are architectural standards or features too that would be added onto here. So if you do, the idea, I'm sorry?
Okay.
The idea is if you do X, Y, and Z, then you can earn X amount of feet, and X amount of units to go in there. Up to 55.
But the minimum of going anywhere above 35 feet is that you have to comply with parking, stormwater, and all that, you know. So whether or not it's written that way, you know, we can sit there and
The
talk
second
about
one
that,
might
but-
be written better, and to the extent that it may, they both say the same thing, but it's just a little bit different.
Under choice 2 or what it looks like?
Choice 2, yeah, you can read what it looks like, it's fine.
Okay, so the next one, I don't know why it says what it looks like, but.
Well, without the track changes.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see, okay. So the next one is, shall the city amend the maximum height limitation in the land development regulations for commercial mixed-use properties fronting the west side of State Road A1A not to exceed 65 feet from the base flood elevation to accommodate current stormwater requirements, sustainable development practices, and resilient building techniques? Go ahead.
Yeah, my comment would be that for all of them, it feels like the cause and effect is the reverse of what you want.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like you're saying you can't have these flood attenuation things until they go to 65 feet. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? In other words, if you could, I mean, is there a way to draft it where you lead with, in order to promote compliance with stricter or more
More
protective, sustainable parking, stormwater?
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah,
Look at the second
shall
one.
the city-
Shall the city amend the,
But if you lead with what you want the reader to understand you're focused on. Because here, I read through it, and by the time I get to the end, it's not at all clear to me what relationship the stormwater requirements, sustainable development practices, and resilient building techniques have to do with anything.
In the second version, instead of the word enable at the end of the fourth line, I pinned in there, in exchange for. In other
Yeah,
words, this
exactly.
is a quid pro quo.
Yes.
There is no, you can't do this unless.
I like the in exchange for, so are you on the bottom, shall the city amend the maximum height limitation in the land development regulations only for commercial and mixed-use zone properties on the west side of A1A, a maximum not to exceed 55 feet from the base flood elevation to enable, or in
Or-
exchange for.
In exchange for.
In exchange
use
for,
of-
I like that.
I mean, if you.
In exchange for new flood protection, stormwater requirements, sustainable development practices, and resilient building techniques for environmental protection and enhancement.
What about
This
if you
one.
say,
How about this, in exchange for, and then the list of, improve stormwater requirements, sustainability, resilient.
Shall the city allow.
city allow?
I like that too.
Because that way, I mean, I
Yeah,
want to
that-
get, if you want people to support this, I
Yeah.
would say put up.
Put that front.
The positives.
what's the, like,
I
what
like
if
that.
we say, shall the city, and then instead of like promote, shall the city, what's another word for promote? Like, that's a little stronger, not promote, but require,
Reduce,
no,
encourage.
Incentivize, coerce.
yeah.
Well, that's the point.
I like that, 'cause that's really what it is.
Coerce.
I think what I read here is I think that this kind of, I think this, the way this is written right here, it kind of assumes an understanding of some other constraints that are inherent in developing the property that not everybody reading this is gonna know.
Right. That's
That
what
if
I'm
you
trying to get
just-
across.
If you just
Yeah.
can't put enough lettable square feet on that,
Right.
half acre of ground, then the project fails financially.
Right.
I think this kind of assumes that the reader knows that before sitting down to read
There
it.
is gonna be some there, we're gonna have to educate people,
It's gonna
but we
be-
only have 88 words to ask the question, you know?
I like what, I like what Thomas
I
just
think it makes a
said.
lot of sense to say, contingent upon or in exchange
Yeah, I
or
like that.
something like that.
And basically what he's saying is, in
I like
exchange,
moving on.
You kind of plop the hats around to the
Yeah.
paragraph.
yeah, in exchange for the use of new flood protection, stormwater,
You're
sustainable
required to ask
development.
the question there, you're required to start off with a question.
Okay.
But,
No,
shall
it
the
could
city-
be in exchange for.
Shall the city,
Shan't we-
that's where I was going.
Because you're still gonna,
It's still a question.
You're just not starting with the word shall, even though it's a question.
Yeah, you're leading in with a reason, and I think that's
I like
what
that.
Thomas was saying.
I think that's
Give them
very
the
good.
reason first, so it doesn't get lost. The other thing I suggest is, instead of just the 55 feet, because I think most people, and that's my inclination, 55 feet, that equals 5 stories. That's not what's intended. And you may, like in parentheses,
I don't want to
3
limit
stories
it. If
plus
somebody
1.
can get 5 stories in that 50 and
Yeah.
do all the things that we want and that the code
Yeah.
requires, let them do it. Because they might get a larger piece of property, that's one
There's
of
a
the
strict number of
incentives.
residential units that are allowed
Yeah.
there too, is it 2 or 4?
No, that would, the density thing is the last one here.
Yeah, but I mean, someone might, instead of,
Yeah, I don't want to put those kind of parameters on
4
that.
units on one floor, they might put, 2 on one and one release, or might stick one on the other.
I get commercial, because that's what we want people to focus on. This is not going to be prevalent throughout the residential. It's strictly on the west side of A1A and commercial. Why do we want to mention mixed use? Mixed use is part of the commercial, and it makes people think that that's residential. and now they're starting to think this is closer to home to them. I mean, what
We'll have
benefit
a
is
fight.
it using word
Do
mixed
you
use?
add residential to your commercial category and they're in here, you did a charter thing for commercial only and now you got all this residential in there?
Yeah, I think it's just good disclosure.
I do agree. Well, of course, nobody wants to hike, but financially, we need to survive.
It's,
I'll tell you what, I mean, just as a practical
I
example,
don't think it's sticking more people, a lot more people.
Oh, absolutely.
we're not at
What's
capacity.
going on?
We're totally not at capacity.
What is our capacity and how much more can we go?
The sewer plant, there's a lot more capacity.
I'll tell you.
Sewer drainage and.
Awesome.
But that's what I'm looking at, when I read the sustainability
We have
plan, I
maintenance
read
problems
studies,
with
how much
utilities.
more can we take before, when we're ruining our environment as it is?
That's because of.
What's ruining it are those old lots.
Capacity, they're not the same.
Yeah.
It's-
By the way,
it-
is St. Patrick's Drive on the west side of A1A?
You're talking about how far in from A1A on the west side?
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
No, I agree with you.
I'm reading the document.
I'm absolutely
And,
agree.
and I like where it said originally fronting.
Yeah,
the west
it's,
side.
yeah, it should say fronting. It should say fronting. I mean, that's clearly where it's intended, is those on.
I'll tell you, as
My
a-
house will become a dog school, I promise.
As a practical example, I'm dealing with somebody right now that's just processed to buy a piece of property on A1A, and his intent is to put a restaurant on it, and I think that he is absolutely banking on being able to put, to make it mixed use, to help offset some
What
of
does
the
mixed
costs.
use mean to you?
Like, to-
That means he
The
puts
restaurant, what's upstairs?
two-bedroom apartments.
Okay.
Okay, can I just, real quick, going
Every
over,
property that's zone commercial is guaranteed a minimum of 2 residential.
No, I'm not saying that currently we can't, and, you have to change it so we can. I'm just saying that is something that is on the mind of anybody that looks at doing that, because it offsets some of their costs.
It offsets a lot of fixed costs, absolutely.
okay,
And
so,
that's one reason why we were hoping for mixed use.
okay, real quick, because I gotta address that concern. When we approve development permits, rezonings, land use amendments, or anything like that, even these code changes, we have to send them to the state with proof that we have facilities to accommodate them. The sewer plant and the water plant, like, from a water supply perspective, we're perfectly fine. Countywide. Same with the sewer plant. There's plenty of capacity at the sewer plant. The problems that we're encountering now are not capacity problems. They're maintenance problems with the lines. And we can't legally deny a building permit to somebody because the county just refuses to maintain their sewer lines. So they're maintaining them now. It took them a while.
The county sewer lines.
Yeah, the county sewer lines.
That's part of the problem, they don't have
Can we
control
sue
over
the county?
everything.
And over water line.
Well, they're replacing all these lines now. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
those trucks are out there doing. And I have a lot of people asking that, can we sue the county? And yeah, we can, but
What do
whatever
you
that
gain?
does.
Yeah,
I
what do you
mean,
gain?
you just spend a lot of money for them to go, okay, we're fixing them, when they're doing it now, so that's, and the other issue is that when you're looking at from an infrastructure standpoint, if you look at, in planning, in the world of planning, we hate urban sprawl. And this is where everybody loves to live, is in the urban sprawl. They like to have space around them. They like to take up big lots of land. Like those 10-acre lots that everybody likes to go by now and put their little fake farm animals on there and, take the poop and push it off to the side of the culverts. Those are the worst polluters on the face of the planet when it comes to stormwater and water quality standards. Because there's no stormwater facilities to collect all that.
There's no pretreatment.
There's no pretreatment, and they take up 10 acres for maybe 3 people, when you get the inner city areas that have a lot more density, have all of this infrastructure addressing all of the pollution, and all of these people in one area
And
paying
support
for that
services.
infrastructure.
Right.
So when you have a road that extends out in the middle of nowhere on a suburban area like Palm Bay, you know why they have so many road problems in Palm Bay? Because there's no one there to pay for them. Because they have a whole neighborhood, these whole neighborhoods with these big long roads with maybe 3 lots out of the 25 that are built. So nobody's paying money into the fund for them to pay for these roads. And so when we're looking at infrastructure costs, urban planning, what's better for the environment, what's better for the environment is if everybody scrunched up and lived together and kept all these open spaces out there. But nobody wants to live that way. Everybody wants to have their big acre lot and all this space
And 10 foot
around
height.
them. And no height, and nobody around them, and all this privacy, but that's the worst thing you can do for the environment.
Well, I think part of the reason for that is that development has tended to, I guess, I don't know whether it's a new concept, but cluster development, where you've got a lot of green space and all this stuff. But the way it's been traditionally done in the past was, oh yeah, we'll build all this stuff together, and then we'll go more here and more here, and the green space it just disappeared. And so, if you had, like, that was part of when we were trying to design the PUD at South Housing, was here's how many units. If you want to put them all in one building in the middle, that's fine, no problem.
Actually, that one turned out really well. We have a very low impervious and a relatively low density in that PUD because of the amount of green space that they've set aside.
What green space?
When's it gonna be built?
Well, when's it going to be built?
I haven't seen any green space in that PUD.
Can it be built?
Sure, it can be built. You're saying the PUD can't be built?
Yeah, when are they gonna build it and can it be built?
Well, we don't know how many acres are going to be built, that's short.
But there's very little green space in Montecito. There's none in Pelican Coast. I mean, there's stormwater areas,
But it will be modern standards, and it will be built to current day requirements. So there'll be good stormwater and good flood attenuation, pretreatment.
That's why we try to get people to redevelop these sites that have no stormwater, no current standard.
No landscaping.
No landscaping, no impervious surface,
Nothing.
to redevelop them and then add those density in there so that it's better to build on what you have and what's already destroyed than continuing to encourage people to build out in the middle of nowhere. And,
That goes nowhere.
because we've already messed up this lot. It's already impacted. There's no animals on it. There's no
habitat.
There's no habitat on it. There's no gopher tortoises in there. But there are all the way out there. And, that's why when we do in other areas that have more environmental issues, like wetlands and, when we take out a corner of a wetland for a train station, when I had the Brevard County planner yelling about that, I'm not going to approve this because it takes out this wetland. And I'm like, yeah, but it's for a train station. And it's a corner of a wetland in an area that's surrounded by development.
Right, it has
Now,
no connectivity.
if it was a corner of a wetland out in the middle of nowhere where it's connected to 400 more acres, yeah, I agree with you. So it's that type of thinking, it's like, we've got to protect the stuff that's already, that hasn't been impacted yet, and get people to start thinking about developing within. And yeah, that's going to take, if you're going to try to get, accommodate people in an area that's already there, yeah, you're going to have to increase your height and you have to increase your density.
And if you look at every smart growth principle, everything that's written about smart growth and what smart growth principles are, it's mixed use, higher density, height, pedestrian, walkability, green space, and those are clearly defined. You can Google smart growth and you'll see everything. You can Google, there's a companion for coastal cities, smart growth for coastal cities, and it's the same thing. So it's not like we're just making, this up and, trying to do something that's destructive. Everything that would happen new on these old parcels will be better for the city, economically, socially, and environmentally.
Theoretically, ideally, since Satellite Beach is already trashed, as it were, as far as natural development, natural areas, we've got Sampson's Island and things which should be preserved. Going back to my comments about green space, if somebody were to add, and this doesn't recommend adding, but were to add units, then you could have like an impact fee that says this then buys green space where there's already lots of green space, adding to. And I'm not, this is an aside, this doesn't have to do with what we're doing.
Yeah, it's just, there's so many,
That's
there's very
complicated.
strict laws on impact fees. And if you charge an impact fee, it has to go to address the impact of that development
And a rational nexus between what you're charging and
and
what
what you're
you're,
gonna use that impact fee for. So
I'm not
you can do a
proposing-
transportation impact fee, and it must be used for transportation, it can't be used for anything else. You know, stuff like that. So you can do like if you're growing as a city and you need public facilities to address that growth, like fire stations or police stations, and you do that impact analysis, you can charge those impact fees for that facility, but it has to be within an area that's serving that particular development that's paying for it. It's very, very strict.
It's basically direct correlation, otherwise it doesn't fly.
Rational nexus.
imposing. In exchange for imposing, no, I don't like that either.
Imposing? Imposing's a negative.
Yeah, it is, I don't like that either.
Just in exchange for,
So,
I
well,
think.
let me just real quick, like, but
In exchange for making your building
your
great.
fear is exactly what we need to, what I'm trying to balance with. Because that is what everybody else is going to be thinking
Well,
when
everyone
you're
I
seeing
know who's
this.
bought in the last few years, and including, that's me as well, we bought here as opposed to some other place because we don't have the level of out-of-hand development that Cocoa Beach has,
Exactly.
that we don't find quaint anymore.
Right.
Satellite Beach is still quaint,
Mhm.
and it's nice, it's family-oriented, you don't come here thinking about nightlife and, you know,
Right.
discotheques.
And that's the balance that we have to,
And it's going to say.
Yeah, we don't.
And
well,
that's not what's gonna
people-
come in these
We
buildings.
don't know. I mean, we don't, you can't predict that. When you allow for, I mean, I'm for going forward up to the 55 point, because we have to do something. But the more you allow that, the more you allow people to come in, businesses they'll create a demand for more things to come in, and it'll continue to grow and grow and grow. So we're just gonna continue to have more,
Well, that's-
greater population.
That's part of the reason why the city has tended to control hotels and motels, okay? Transient facilities, because that's what's kind of feeding Cocoa Beach, you know, you got all the motels and hotels and everything. And here, the city put in the rentals business that I can't rent out my house, you know, we had that discussion.
yeah, we've
last
never
council
wanted a
meeting.
tourist economy over here.
Yeah,
We
and
don't even
so,
allow flashing signs, I mean.
and so.
All in favor of
The city for decades has consciously resisted and tend to point to Cocoa Beach as the bad example. We don't want to be Cocoa Beach, and that's why we limit hotels, that's why we limit,
What'd you
I
say?
totally agree with you, but I would like to say it another way.
Yeah, so there's sections of Cocoa Beach.
No, I
that-
don't mean taking the words,
Yeah,
I
clear
wasn't
about
talking
that,
words.
too.
I'm saying that one of the things we need to do, which we're all struggling with, is understanding what our values are at Satellite Beach and what we want to look like in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. And get consensus for that and understand how that's going to get paid for and what's that going to look like. Because if you want to have high rises and lots of revenues and lots of traffic, that's one set of values.
That's what we're doing here.
Exactly, we're backing into this where Sheila's coming, coming from that place, we have this quaint neighborhood, we don't want to lose
Well, I
that.
want to correct you though, it's not necessarily, a traffic thing. In terms of the units.
I didn't mean that, literally.
Okay.
I didn't mean that literally, I'm just saying that if we allowed on A1A 20-story buildings all the way up and down, you're going to have more traffic. And so if you allow that, that comes with it, what do you get for that? And maybe that's not our values, we don't want that.
This is, okay. wait.
So where are we? What do we
This is
want?
the thing, so we are coming to a close. Because we've been talking about this for about 2 months now.
I know clarity is everything.
I know, but I'm just saying when we're talking about redevelopment and growth, we are literally focusing on this to accommodate the losses we're gonna have in the future in certain areas of the city. So we may be adding apartments and density units in some areas, but we know we're gonna lose them in some areas in the
Right.
future as well. And I think we need to be cognizant of that, like,
From
From South
the
Patrick.
east side, yeah.
Like my house.
West side.
Yeah, I was going to suggest, why don't we take a quick look at that last one, because that we seem to have drifted.
Right, so let me just, and then also, so you just moved here, but so a lot of people, you wouldn't remember this, but when, about I would say starting in 2000 is when the population decline started. And so a lot of the businesses that we have here are no longer here because of that population decline. So we have restaurants that are closed, we used to have a bowling alley, all of these things that could have been supported by the population here can't anymore because it's gone. So this area, even though people who are new don't remember that because like they see the condo buildings growing up and they're like, we don't have the facilities for this. Well, yeah, we do, because we used to have a hotel there, you know, restaurants filled, that 100 acres, there was units there that far surpassed what's in there now. I mean, so the density that was there is much greater than what is currently built there now. So we have to keep in mind that if we want our businesses to stay here, we have to maintain a certain population. And that's the reason that we're looking at this, not only from an environmental standpoint, but you have to keep the ability to change as time goes on so we maintain a level of service here. Otherwise, we're going to be driving over the bridge for everything we need, which is horrifying.
And the
we're not
dollar,
gonna-
from a financial perspective, needs to turn over 4 times in your community.
Yeah.
If you keep going across the river and spending it there, but it's not getting spent back.
I mean, I used to work at BA's Deli, which is right next to, where is that, what is that there now? The Rocket Lounge over in the county area. You know where the,
So like Pineda.
right by
Behind
Pineda.
the 7-Eleven,
Yeah.
yeah.
So in every lunch hour at 11 o'clock, we would get slammed by military people. I mean, just, it was packed. And now, if you got to lunch around here, you may be lucky if you see 6 or 7 out. Maybe.
And the thing is that we do have responsibilities to maintain our own infrastructure, to maintain our own streets, to maintain our parks, our police, our fire, and so on and so forth. And on diminished values from our commercial areas, it puts greater pressure on the residential areas, and it can't be supported. And so it's not only environmental sustainability, but it's economic sustainability. And as we're looking at climate change and sea level rise and the loss of places over on the west side of our community, we're looking to replace that and have the ability to take care of our community in the future. Because otherwise we're in deep trouble.
If we don't have an economic base, we don't have to
You're
worry about
dead.
sustainability
You're
and
dead.
everything else. It's tough.
Well, when we
And the
started
city
CRA
council may change it once you get done with it and send it up to them. They may be like, the city council, you know, because they balk at anything higher than 55 feet, so they may even lower it then.
But I'd like to hear their compelling reason for blocking. And sometimes from.
Their compelling reason was, people are going to be scared out of their minds and they're not going to vote for it, and we're going to get annihilated. That's the reason.
Those guys, along with you and along with you, know the city, but I hate to start with, they'll never buy into that, let's not do it.
I've
That's a
I've done a lot of my
really
homework.
position.
I mean, I've done a lot of homework and asking people what they'd accept, and
Well,
the immediate reaction
The
is that.
default answer is no. Why would you ever answer yes to that question?
Even after I sit down with them and go through all of the things, I don't want to look like Miami. You guys better be careful about how you do that. That was the answer.
Double the military, and let's drop this.
So we have to have a balance, is what I'm trying to say.
I don't think it's a yes or no, I think it's.
To what extent?
To what extent? Yeah, and why?
That's the intellectual exercise, there's no question about it, but if I went up to somebody in the street and said, would you mind if we put 5-story buildings up on A1A? No, I don't want that.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
you have-
It's not in context, it's nothing.
You have to preface that by saying,
I know, you gotta get the whole
well,
story.
right, but you know, in truth, it might not be parking underneath. So it won't, I don't want everybody to think that, you know, every building is gonna have parking underneath. Every building is gonna have new stormwater, they're gonna have better parking, they're gonna have less pervious, they're gonna have, you know, all sorts of sustainability things.
Less impervious. Impervious, right?
The rest of us.
Less
are gonna let
impervious,
us-
more pervious. Thank you. But, you know, and the way that they're gonna get to that is by doing more of these things.
And they'll be using the property that's already there, just that's underdeveloped. We're not going to have them expand out into other areas. We're
We're
going to.
sitting satellite beaches.
The frontal area.
It's anything fronting on A1A, anything fronting on A1A.
That means your.
Commercially.
The commercial areas.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, could somebody assemble a piece of land and try and rezone a piece that's adjacent, contiguous to them? to commercial, sure, they could, but that has to go through a process, a public hearing process.
Yeah,
and
then
so
we have to
forth.
still go through.
Yeah.
I
I mean, I
I
just
just
don't
don't
know.
understand how anybody that's living in Satellite Beach could say, I'm okay with a 4-story, but I don't want a 5-story.
What
I just don't get
You'd be amazed, that there's a fear, it's a fear.
It's just, it is an
You're from an area that had horrible buildings, people who are from here, they've never seen that.
I had an office
I-
in 70.
I mostly live in megacities around the world, and it is horrible, and it is not less polluting to have people.
Well, megacities, I think, are a little different, but when
Yeah,
you
so
do,
you gotta be careful when you use that language.
yeah, I mean, I've never said that megacities are great. I mean, when you're looking at higher density areas, though, that have, their appropriate infrastructure, they pay for that. And they actually, in downtowns, subsidize suburban development. Absolutely, subsidize.
But if you look at the models of new communities going, even Lake
I'm writing it, so.
Everybody in Lake Nona building thousands of homes here. You either go by bike or you walk, and then there's a central downtown, there's restaurants to walk to and things like that.
And that's how you fight climate change.
Is it right?
Is by keeping people
But
out
all
of
those
that
things
mud.
are.
So did we get a consensus on
So did you want to start like
that paragraph?
I'm working on rewriting it while y'all keep
Shall we,
talking.
blah, 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 that way you get the sustainability in there. I don't know if it goes over your 800 word limit. What do we have?
88.
88.
Oh, anyhow, it doesn't matter.
Oh, we're well within that.
So in keeping with the sustainability plan, the Saddle Beach Sustainability Plan, comma, shall we?
Well, wait a minute, I'm working on it. Y'all give me a minute, I'm working on it.
I like it to, how about, what do you think about that contingent upon?
I liked his in exchange for.
In exchange for it.
Yeah, so that's where I'm going. Huh?
Exchange for the giving and stuff.
Yeah,
That's right, yeah.
parcels fronting on,
Continues kind of big.
yeah,
The
west
west
side of
side.
A1A.
A lot of letters.
Well, even if one is, it's gonna have to get one choice.
Of course.
Well, yeah,
And then as simple as possible.
And city stimulate redevelopment
In the-
by,
in exchange for-
I got it.
We understand what that means.
Okay, you ready? In exchange for,
Here, you can read it, I've written it.
That's it, size up.
yeah.
By allowing,
in exchange for compliance with current flood attenuation standards, water quality, well, I guess we could just say flood attenuation, water quality, parking, landscaping, and sustainability standards, shall the city allow a building height, or shall the city allow, commercially zoned,
let me give it a try. In exchange for new flood protection, stormwater requirements, sustainable development practices, and resilient building techniques, shall the city stimulate redevelopment of commercial/mixed-use parcels fronting on the west side of A1A by allowing a new height allowance to 55 feet.
Up to.
The west side of
Up to.
A1A? The west side of A1A?
The west side of A1A.
Didn't we say something? Didn't we?
I said fronting on
fronting.
I said fronting on the west side of A1A.
say that again,
Now,
Thomas?
but you, and in what we've got here, it said maximum from the base flood elevation.
Oh, there we go.
And while the thing is, I
Do
was
you
going
want
to
to
ask
use
about
base flood
that.
elevation? Let's not do that. Let's not put that in
Okay.
charter. Yeah, let's not put
Yeah, I
that
think
in
that
charter.
should be in our definitions. I don't think we should put that in the
The
charter.
city council should be able to make that adjustment.
That's not 8th grade.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean.
right. No, that's right. This is 8th
I don't
grade.
even think we have established base flood
Well,
elevation.
Yeah.
Most of the west side is where you're right, X zone, which means outside of your flood, and therefore you don't have an established base flood.
So that's when we need to tweak the definition in the code and not in the charter by allowing either 24 inches above the crown of the road or base flood elevation if you have one. Either way. But we can talk about that.
You guys like that? You guys like that?
What you, what council like?
What I read?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
Yeah, I'd like to hear something again, because
You were.
In exchange for new flood protection, stormwater requirements, sustainable development practices, and resilient building techniques, shall the city stimulate redevelopment of commercial/mixed-use parcels fronting on the west side of A1A by allowing a height allowance to a maximum of 55 feet.
Now, do you want to say to stimulate, do we really need to say that? Or-
Well, she was trying to get to promote, so I was,
I think you have allow in there an extra time, a time once more than necessary by allowing a maximum allowable. How about just by allowing a maximum height?
We'll catch that later.
yeah, I think, I only see one allowing.
But I digress.
I only see, there's a stimulate and there's an allowing, I don't see two allowings.
Incentivize is also a really good one.
I do like that stuff, stimulate.
I'm partial to encourage.
Do you like that?
Pretty well run.
Nurture, nurture, forward, advocate, further, again. Yes, encourage. How about encouraging?
Encourage is the only other word I like.
I know, me
That's
too.
what we need the economic base.
So let's encourage them. What?
Encouraged, I am very encouraged by that.
Me too, I feel.
Look, it's not dark.
I feel empowered. Yeah, we'll put it in.
Let him write this.
So, I mean, okay, so I'm gonna throw this out there. If we say encourage, or stimulate, or promote, there are gonna be people say, we don't want any development, we're not gonna encourage anything, we're not gonna stimulate anything. So maybe we,
Well, but if you start with a discussion of, we have.
In exchange
an
for.
economic growth issue we're trying to address as well.
Why not say, see, when you read it, you left out that final
How about this?
environmental
To
protection
gain
enhancement.
compliance.
I thought I was getting over wordy.
How about,
What if you said for environmental protection and
Enhance.
commercial enhancement or something like that? It gives a reason. Okay,
Or economic enhancement, I like,
Yeah, how about to gain compliance with flood protection, stormwater requirements, sustainable development practices, and resilient building techniques, shall the city,
I took out stimulate, promote, encourage.
how about shall the city, require redevelopment of commercial mixed-use, or not?
Not require.
Shall the city allow
Allow.
redevelopment
Yeah.
of commercial mixed-use properties to have a maximum height of
55 feet. There you go.
Allow
Pretty
us to have
straightforward.
a judgment there.
did it open by in exchange for?
Yes.
No.
For the exchange of, the city will allow.
I like the exchange part.
So this is the thing though, because then you basically, some people might say, you know, we don't.
Selling our city off.
Yeah, we don't care if it gets new, if it becomes new. So why don't we say, shall the city require, no, I'm sorry, shall the city, what was it? To gain compliance.
To gain compliance.
To gain compliance of new
With new.
With
flood-
new
Flood, blah, blah, blah.
flood protection, stormwater requirements, sustainable development practices, and resilient building techniques, shall the city allow the redevelopment of commercial mixed-use parcels on the west side.
Fronting on the west
Fronting
side.
on the west side of A1A, to have a height, maximum height of 55 feet,
To obtain a maximum height.
of up to 55 feet.
Uh-huh.
Okay, what town do you open that then? The first,
Did you write
the first few words?
To require, to.
To gain compliance with.
With new flood protection, stormwater requirements, and so on.
Okay, when you talk about new compliance, then I think that's beginning to, the quid pro quo thing is.
To gain compliance.
Yeah, I like that a lot, actually.
So you're basically insinuating, if you don't do this, you're not gonna get compliance with stormwater. blah,
Right.
blah, blah.
Which we're not.
Which is kind of true.
We're not, that's why we have all these undeveloped pieces that are rotting the environment.
That's why we keep driving down Indian Harbor Beach to go out to dinner.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
that's just the truth of it.
or Indy Atlantic, or Melbourne Beach.
Well, we have talked, you know, we've got this
Sometimes
long
people
list
wanna
of
sit down
things
in
we
air
want to
conditioned
talk
buildings.
about. Landscaping,
You gotta try.
that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's really good. You guys gotta try Rogue River. It's really good.
What is it?
Rogue River
It is really
tap room.
pricey, but it is.
It's really good.
It has the best steak I've had in years.
It's excellent,
Are you
excellent
going to-
food.
What is-
No, it's where the, Health First is and where the Dunkin' Donuts and Pizza Hut.
When's your anniversary?
Out in the century area?
No, on A1A. Yeah. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
They're over here digressing just beyond.
So these are underpinnings, don't evaluate that.
Well, that's all in here. That doesn't need to be in here. That's just a catch-all.
$26 a steak, they said that sounds like a hamburger.
So, I think that's good, everybody's good with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next
Everybody's good with
question
that?
is, I know,
So we see it, yeah, really.
I know that we, talked about the possibility of not needing a charter amendment for the density issue, but talking through with it with the attorney we do. So,
I think just for
what we would,
clear.
yeah, and then we don't have to ever wonder if we're right,
Right.
you know, we just do it right
Right.
the first time. So the recommended question would be, yeah, I don't think it's changed, right? Shall the city be allowed to amend the land development regulations to move allowable density in multifamily and mixed-use zoning districts from flood-prone areas of the city to areas of the city with higher elevations, as long as the overall allowable density currently allowed in the city is not increased?
I did make some changes. I did make some changes to that. Because it's not mixed-use zoning districts, and we shouldn't say what districts. I mean, it's just that area. And currently unused allowable units, because it's really not density, it's units that we're moving.
Why don't you, because
Okay, yeah, that's good.
people, when you say units, you know, folks haven't been through all the intricacies that a unit is a residential unit, that you could think commercial unit. Why not say residential units, even though it's redundant in this sense, since we're talking density?
Unused allowable residential units.
Okay. Shall the city be allowed to amend the land development regulations to move currently unused allowable residential units from flood-prone areas of the city to areas of the city with higher elevations, as long as the overall allowable density? You want
This
to
is
leave
the
that
question you
way?
read when you go into the voting booth.
Do
Right.
not know what it means, yeah.
Do you have, you don't have to use allowable twice. You-
Everybody would say maybe.
Just say as long as the overall,
I regard myself as a relatively smart guy, and,
Number of units.
I never read that.
The overall-
I've been here,
I'm
I
not
would
sure
have
why
to
we're
read that
moving,
3 or 4
moving
times.
the sites. Is there another way to say that, instead of moving the sites? Shall the city be allowed to move
Yeah.
the sites?
The word to move.
It's a transfer, it's what it is, it's a.
A
transfer
transfer
deed works.
title, is that what you?
no. No, what we're doing is we have done an analysis of this area of the city, the low areas, South Patrick, and identified that, based on the zoning district, what's actually been put in the ground versus what's been allowed. And there's a differential in some cases where there's units that are left over that have not been used.
Houses
With
that
me?
are unused?
No, they're units that somebody could have built that are allowed for that piece of property. Okay, based on our code, it says you can have 20, and what was built is 10. So there's a differential of 10 units
Yes and no.
I believe.
that are not,
A lot of
I'm
the-
just making it
A
simple.
lot of,
Okay.
a lot
You're
of,
allowed to have such and such more, and they're not.
Is that part of the jelly bean bowl?
That's the
All
joke.
right.
but a lot of the properties were built before we did a mixed-use code. So they could tear down their property tomorrow and build more density. And what we're trying to do is not allow that, because we don't want to approve, right.
Exactly.
We don't want to approve development where it shouldn't go. But we want to keep the ability to grow, because we need to do that for, you know, what we all just talked about. So we want to move it to areas that are higher elevations. And having that density over on higher elevations would promote developers to actually tear down the buildings and rebuild the way we were just talking about.
You're gonna have to from the A1 again?
Yes,
That's what we're talking
that's
about.
what we're
Can
talking
I
about.
get a question in? Is it necessary that the word move is in there at all?
That's what we don't, that's what, they don't like that either.
That's the
They're
confusing part.
relocated.
Transfer.
Transfer title of or transfer?
Well, no, it's not title.
Do I understand correctly that there are currently unused,
Units.
unused density units?
Unused units, not density, unused
Okay,
units.
unused units. So does it even have to be phrased in a way to indicate that, well,
those units over there are gonna be underwater one day, and we don't want them
What
to
about if we
continue
say,
to-
shall the city be allowed to amend the land development regulations to transfer currently unused development rights? Does that make sense to people?
No, people aren't gonna understand that.
I think the flood thing is kind of scary too. And are the allowed, are the unused allowed units kind of tied to the area near to South Patrick?
No, it's not people.
Yeah, they're
Oh,
allowed.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so it does have to state in some way, that those allowable units become no longer allowed, and these become allowed.
Why don't we say this, why don't we say this? Shall the city be allowed to amend the land development regulations to decrease
Yes,
allowable
that's where I
density
was going.
in flood-prone areas of the city and increase allowable density in areas of higher elevation as long as the overall allowable density currently, or allowed, maybe as long as the overall build-out density currently allowed in the city is not increased.
Yes.
Why-
Yes, he said use the word transfer.
Why did you have that last piece?
We're trying to increase density on A1A, and here you're saying you can't allow it, you can't increase the density.
Because we're moving it.
It's a wash. It's a wash.
I know, overall, if they physically have to take that building down and build it somewhere else, why do they have to stay the same density?
No.
No, that the overall density of the city.
Throughout the whole city. It
Yeah,
stays the
right.
same.
Okay.
Okay,
Now,
so,
why not say fronting A1A? Again, what I'm thinking about is trying to keep, because the voter that really doesn't know much that's going on, that makes it clear.
I think that's fair enough. I mean, I think that's.
Because
I think that's
otherwise,
fair.
you
I
know,
really
I'm
do.
two blocks in and I say, wait a minute, I don't want more density
wait,
here.
wait.
Yeah, that way you don't get.
But I like everything you said.
Okay. Shall the city be allowed to amend land development regulations
To
to
transfer.
decrease
allowable density.
allowable,
Currently
no,
unused.
I would just say allowable density.
Yeah, just say allowable density, don't get too.
From flood-prone areas of the city,
Do you want to say flood prone? Because somebody could argue right now, that's not flood prone.
Well, we're
From
not
lower
defining
elevations
you're not
in the city?
defining what's flood prone in this question.
Just say from the west side of the city to the
That's
east
a
side of the
yes,
city.
I think you gotta get rid of that flood thing.
Yeah, I think that's scary, maybe.
What if you said along
They
the,
need to know they're going underwater.
no,
They need
it's
a
not
reason
just
why.
the South Patrick corridor
It-
though,
well, it's-
because you went,
I did, I went in.
yeah, you went in.
So it's on the west side of the
On
city.
the west side of South Patrick, or just the?
No, it's on both sides of South Patrick.
Yeah, well,
It's on both sides of South Patrick.
because where I'm going with that is, if I was one of those mean people on the west side of South Patrick, I'd be voting no to this, because I don't want my density taken away from
I'm
me.
sure you will,
Well, you might.
but the majority of the
You
residents
might not
don't.
want your neighbors increasing density on their lots.
And a lot of those people.
You might not want somebody.
Will that come across when they're voting
next
next
door to you, probably.
Well, I guess how do you describe the area and include Emerald Isles? That's the basic question.
But I don't think the area is defined in this question, is it?
You just say in the west side of the city.
You can't define that area. I mean,
You
you're
just
just
say
saying, that's what I'm like trying to.
from the
leave
west
it,
side of the
you know.
city.
Yeah.
It may not be,
From the west side of the city to the east side of the city.
Why not say to the, as we
I wouldn't
have
do
to
that.
do
You
it
gotta
before.
include flooding somewhere, otherwise people don't, why are you doing this? Why would we wanna do
It's a
that?
fair-
Yeah.
Fair point.
You know?
Yeah, right, I mean, if
What's
we
the point?
don't say exactly.
I mean,
what it is.
with what, I think with what you just said, people's objections are going to come as a term in the form of, are you telling me that I have to have less people in my house? No.
They don't
Well,
know
no.
where, it's predicted.
If you say flood prone, or could you say something like, at elevated risk of flooding?
Everybody that lives here knows if their neighborhood is flood prone or not, because we've all lived through it a few times. I mean, I've watched the water, creep up my driveway almost to the garage door and then go back
I would
down
call
when
it,
it stopped raining.
See, that's what
Most everybody here has seen that type of thing.
future development density.
But
what I would call it.
that's like a case up on,
Shift.
trying to think of the street up on, Sherwood, I think, in that
Hamlin and
area.
Kale.
Kale.
Hamlin and Kale.
Kale.
Okay,
That's awful.
we're not talking about
These are,
that
but they're,
location.
yeah, I mean, but that's, so,
Well, I live on Jamaica, and that's what I'm talking about. I mean, that's the south end of Kale. I mean, it didn't come up in the house, but it was darn near.
Yeah.
I mean, it floods there.
Well, if
you
you were
could
to
say,
carefully,
shall the city be allowed to amend the LDRs to decrease future development density in areas,
Prone to flooding.
I would say,
and
in
increased
areas.
risk of flooding.
Okay. In,
Identify as flood risk.
Y'all cut it out.
All right.
She's gonna hit me.
I'm gonna leave it. Okay, in areas at risk for sea level rise flooding. That's basically what we're talking about.
Really? Only due to climate change?
Not sea,
Not due to
well,
any
it could be
other
hurricanes,
weather
too.
event?
You know, right now. We could
I
have.
don't know what in the world's the matter with just flood prone.
Yeah, I keep looking.
I mean,
Because some people think that, you know, the area of Hamlin is flood prone, because
No,
it's only
okay.
flood prone because we don't have the appropriate
Flood prone
maintenance
from
on the
rising
stormwater
water.
lines.
Okay. Flood prone from rising water.
That has nothing to
That's
do with
not
anything but
usable.
stormwater lines. Mm.
Well, that would be sea level. That would be what she said was sea level.
Okay.
In
I was
areas
trying to
at risk-
avoid that phrase.
yeah, I'm inclined to agree with John there. I think that just invites, I think that invites an ideological objection with,
It might.
with closed ears to not hear any explanation.
How many people do you think that is, though? When you're looking at the amount of news that talks about climate change and sea level rise, and, I mean, it's like you're inundated every night.
I'm surprised on a regular basis at how many people object to that just on an
Object to-
ideological basis.
Don't believe in climate change.
Yeah, just object to anything that relates to that in whatever way.
I know that, but I've found many, many people over the last few years quit objecting to change. The only thing they're objecting to, whether we're causing it or it's natural, so they are agreeing that there is sea rise, they're just saying that maybe humans aren't involved.
You could
Is
just,
it, I mean, it kind of, along with what Sheila was saying earlier, I mean, you know, keep it as simple as possible, I think. You know,
how about,
you don't
shall
have
the
to
city
say
be
that.
allowed to amend
It's flood prone. Everybody knows it's flood prone, you don't have to agree on why, but, I mean, you just see water come up in your yard.
and
It doesn't impact the city enough
increase
if we have to do it.
Technically,
density
what way? Legal,
Yeah.
risk-wise?
What if you said flooding from the lagoon?
areas of the city,
Because that includes Cat 1 or 2 or whatever that comes up and gives you a storm surge.
How about in order to reduce impacts to residential areas in, to residences in flood-prone areas, can the city shift unused residential units to the lands fronting on the west side of A1A?
That sounds like a vacant house.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, an unused residential unit sounds like a
Yeah, they
vacant
don't
house.
This is a shift on the books, this is
Yeah.
not a,
This is, no, it's not a physical move.
Yeah, folks won't get that.
I know, that's the problem. That's what I keep coming back to in
I
my own
wouldn't
head.
get that.
What if you said unbuilt allowable?
why don't we do this? Fronting A1A, not to exceed. Okay, shall the city be allowed to amend the LDRs to decrease future development density in areas at risk for increased flooding and increased density in areas of the city with higher elevations to be limited to properties fronting State Road A1A as long as the overall
I wouldn't go
density
there.
in the city is not increased?
Yeah, yeah, as long as it's not increased, yeah.
That may take a little, and the planning board may do some adjustments anyway, but I think, in my mind, that represents a sense of what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
It's just gonna go to council, it doesn't have to go to P and Z.
Well, I'm sure our attorney's gonna,
Yeah, no, it needs to get condensed. It needs to be-
Can you get rid of?
Yeah, but I like that, I like that. The decrease and increase, I think is really what,
should be limited to properties fronting State Road A1A, not as long as,
Do you need to reference, Thomas was saying, do you need to reference LDR?
As a receiving.
yes, we have to, because that's the way our charter is worded. So we're not allowed to change our LDRs without voter approval. So we're basically asking for their approval to change our LDRs.
So you have to ask for their approval to change something you don't even know exists.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
So this, and.
this
and
is why
To give you an
voter
idea.
referendums
of
don't
why
work.
that happened was because of the Ramada site with the 2 condos going up. That was approved, scared the crap out of everybody. It increased the height of that property by 9 feet.
Yeah,
right?
9 feet.
9 feet.
9 feet.
And everybody lost their minds.
That's less than
Yeah.
this wall.
We all hate it.
Everybody lost their minds. But I grew up with the Ramada there.
It was already
It
there.
didn't bother me.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Again, no context. If you see the whole thing, it's.
And the traffic there was horrible, worse because of the Ramada.
Much worse with the
Way worse.
hotel.
There's more, traffic per room.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Than there is for just.
Yeah, and you've got restaurants and things like
That's the big
that.
argument, all the traffic's gonna be horrible, it's like, no,
No.
there's more traffic with a hotel.
Well,
Absolutely.
the other thing is that's behind the scenes, they had approved plans for a hotel,
Yeah, exactly.
which was
Which would
never
have been more
built,
beds
which could have
than
been.
what the Oceana has. Which would have been more beds than the 180 units Oceana has.
Okay, so see, that's the backstory
Yeah.
that nobody hears.
You're right. So I think you're on the right track.
Shall the city be allowed to amend the LDRs to decrease future development density in areas at risk for increased flooding and increased density in areas of the city with higher elevations to be limited to properties fronting State Road A1A as long as the overall density currently allowed in the city is not increased?
Uh-huh. Or you could say so that the density, current density instead of in order for, so that.
You
We can
might
tweak
want
that.
to switch out the
That's good.
A1A and higher elevations. The reason is when you read it, in my mind, I thought you were talking basically properties along
Yeah.
A1A.
Might wanna add some more therefore.
Right, therefore,
And
however,
heretofore.
Whereas,
such
Yeah,
as,
Definitely need to start. with
Consequentially.
No, as was.
Consequentially.
attorneys like to say as such. As
Therefore,
such.
such and shall be contingent upon the aforementioned.
As of
Yes,
that
yes, the aforementioned. We have to get into the
Yeah, if
aforementioned.
you don't use aforementioned, it doesn't
Yeah,
actually count.
or the aforesaid.
Yeah, that can be some.
So,
notwithstanding.
yeah, that's a good one too, notwithstanding.
Also known
So,
as-
notwithstanding the fact that we only have one more meeting,
But that usually precedes just some lame excuse.
but I'm being serious, notwithstanding the fact that we only have one more meeting. And it's scheduled for the 27th of this month. Would you all be averse to, changing it? Courtney is suggesting the 19th, so that we can
Do
go.
that?
I prefer that, because I don't get family coming in.
So that we can go over, the incentives,
The code section of
the
it.
actual code sections. I've changed it, a little bit from what, we saw, the last few meetings,
You want to
sort of
change it?
refining it,
27 to what?
the 19th, if that's good.
Oh, well, for my own case, definitely not the 19th.
Okay.
Any other day that week, or do we have to keep to a Tuesday?
That was actually a
Just
Monday.
have the, yeah, I have.
What's the Monday?
I have voice
The
notes
19th.
on that, and we have kind of a special event, the bonfire.
26th?
I'm on-
How about the 21st?
I can't do that, I'm gonna be out of town. It's also a
How
council
about you
meeting.
decide, I'll adjust my calendar.
Monday is just very difficult.
20th, I'm gonna be driving out of town to Jacksonville. 22nd?
What are you gonna grow at?
I can,
What day of the week?
Yeah,
the 22nd is a Thursday. I can do the 22nd, I can do the 20th. I think I can actually do the oh, no, I'm going with you to Jacksonville.
No, it's I can't get you,
Oh,
so you're not going with me.
okay, then never mind.
24th? The 23rd.
That's a Friday night.
It's a Friday. Is that a bad day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me give you an example.
I was
I
trying
have
to
I
think of a
have
day
a-
that we don't
Yeah, I
have.
would have done that,
What?
Friday.
It's just that some, like, for me, I usually have meetings every night of the week.
Yeah.
I mean, I can guarantee if we don't meet on the 19th, I will have something fill that night up. And so Friday nights and Saturday nights and Sunday nights are off limits for me.
Sacred.
For my
Monday the 19th then, is that what we're saying?
Let's try for the 19th, and we'll see who all we can get.
If we can't, then we can just move it into,
So
it's just the
will
first
Julie
week of
send
April, is
something
spring
out?
break, so,
Yeah, that's good.
Will Julie send something out real quick?
yeah. But you want to be there, though, so we'll figure it out.
Well, I mean, if you can't, you know.
What about Monday
if
the
you can't-
26th?
Those 2 Mondays, I mean, I have something with the Boy Scouts that
No, that's
those
important.
Mondays that I.
Yeah,
That's important.
And I can't.
That's
How about
important.
Wednesday?
No, it's not.
Wednesday
It
the
is.
28th?
I'm not that whole week.
Jenny can Skype.
Oh, okay.
Okay, then so what about the 28th? That keeps it the same week we were gonna have it. Well, I mean, it's been on the schedule for the 27th. So if we just shifted a day, how many,
I'm good. March 28th?
you wouldn't have been here on the 27th though either, right?
You can't do the 28th?
28th is okay? 28th is okay?
What day is that?
Wednesday.
Well, what are we gonna do that day?
Going over the.
We're gonna go over the
I'll do
regulations.
that. That works.
The reason I'm asking is because which people definitely have to be there for this, as opposed to some others like myself that maybe it's not critical. that I'm
I think
here.
everybody's critical.
What about the
I'm not- I
week
don't
of the
mean to
9th?
mention
Because if we push it out, I don't mind, because we're gonna be passing that code through council. So if y'all wanna do April 9th, yeah.
That works.
Yeah, I mean, because really the critical piece was the questions.
You wanna do April 10th then? So we'll cancel the next meeting and just move on to the other one?
April
Can everybody do
10th?
that?
You're gonna cancel April 10th?
No, we're gonna do it on.
Keep that-
That's
You're gonna-
actually far better for me than anything you've said so far.
Okay.
becomes the.
Is everybody okay with that?
That
Okay.
becomes a
So
theoretical.
we're canceling March 27th?
Yes. Okay, good. So April
So
10th.
that'll be our last,
Yes.
that'll be our last one.
Leave it at that.
You're gonna be here. I know where you live.
Okay, if I hit the lottery tomorrow.
I heard that.
You have a
Because I don't have
basket.
lottery tickets anyway, ever, but if I did hit the lottery tomorrow,
You won't be.
this, I would still be here.
Thank you.
It would be work. and
Then I get to
stuff,
keep
and
the basket, right?
I would be here and I would fish a lot more.
Then I get to keep the basket, right, Jeff?
Since I don't buy lottery tickets.
That's your
I
basket.
know.
That's so cool.
I know.
You bought a ticket.
I bought a lot of tickets, I didn't win.
Bought two
I didn't
cheap
win anything.
ones.
I never win anything.
I do, as long as my husband doesn't touch it, and I didn't tell him about the raffle.
Okay, so April 10th, we'll send out a notice.
Six.
And then, we'll send out I'll just send you the agenda, I was just kidding. So we'll send you guys out the agenda for the PAD. They want the agenda for the PAD. It has the, comp plan and the,
The CCL
Yeah.
stuff?
It's not going on the 19th, apparently.
Hey, we all did our part with Ford today.
Yeah, I know.
We'll vote on that one.
Yeah, it's okay. Do we want to let everybody have these? To just kind of look at, knowing that these are a
let's email
draft?
it to them when we get to them. Let's meet and go through it.
Okay.
It'd be sure if you email it.
Yeah, it's kind of hard, it's
Carry that heavy
unwieldy.
paper
Huh?
Instead of us carrying that heavy paper. Well, be that many fewer trees if we can.
And just so everybody knows, April 3rd, we're having a utility workshop over at the Civic Center where sewer, water, and stormwater will be presented. So if everybody's interested in that.
Is that for budgeting purposes, or?
And we have to present a stormwater fee increase. And we knew that when we talked about stormwater, we would be like, what about the sewer? And what about, you gonna do about the water? So we just invited water and sewer to be
What the
Oh, those are,
So what are you doing about the sewer? And I'll be like, I don't have any, that's not my utility. And they're gonna, oh, so you're passing the buck, that's what I get. And so I figured if they're there.
You should say that, so yeah, because pay them the buck.
Right. That's what I tell people, I'm like, would you replace the roof on your neighbor's house? That's exactly how I phrase it. Yeah.
That's good communication.
So,
And the answer is no.
Right.
The answer
So
is
we're not gonna fix Brevard County. Did everybody sign in? Did everybody sign that so that we can give that? No.
Okay. Everything okay?
Thank you. Y'all gave great input tonight. Thank you very, very much, everybody. It was great. I know sometimes it gets a little anxious.
What?
It gets a little anxious.
What, this?
Yeah.
Well, I hate wordsmithing.
I
I was only good at that one.
I'm a wordsmither. I'm a good
Oh my
wordsmith.
gosh, I'm sometimes, I'll send in an email, and I'll go back and look at it, and then sometimes I just say to myself, like I'm sitting there at my desk, and I just say, and then I say, I'm not, the phone, my boss,
And his boss had a whole bunch of people at that level, and me, and some of we were writing a letter to Senator Clinton in New York. We wordsmithed that for 3 days. I bet you did. We got that thing perfect, and you know how it was? Here's the answer.
You can't win. Oh, my gosh. How
I'm bringing a
absolutely
copy and show it to
mortifying.
you. It is hysterical.
Oh, my gosh, how mortifying, I'm sure. Okay, meeting adjourned at 8:23.
That's really valuable.